History's another Western victory. Victory, cheers go out for Western U. Western U. Rah, rah, rah. To the right now. Canadian, 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 Canadian. All blue. Rickety, rackety, rickety, roo. High up, sky up, Western U. W-E-S-T-E-R-N. Western, Western, Western. Woo! Please stay standing for the land recognition. Western University is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron peoples, who have long-standing relationships to the land and region of southwestern Ontario and the City of London. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. Western values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island, North America. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we will now do roll call. For all outgoing members of council, you can use your clickers, and all incoming, we will be doing roll call via the roll call sheet. Oh yeah, polls are now open for outgoing councilors, so go ahead and put your attendance in. Okay, so then for incoming, I'll just read your last name and then just say here. All right, Adair. Hukal. Yeah? Oh, okay. Sorry, just yell it out. Al-Shamil. Kular. If you're a proxy also. No? No? Okay. Anthony. Apple. Batchtold. Baldwin. Barroso, over there. Campbell, Denezi, Eversley, Fernandez, Fiaz, there's a proxy somewhere, Foreman, Hollenberg, yep. Hunter, Kamenetsky, Larocque Gervais. Okay. Lawler. Liu. Ma. Malioko. Marfil. Yes. Marginian. Macaulay. Yeah. McGee. Murray. O'Connor. Polster, Potter, Raja, Rocchese, Sawyer, Stebbing, Sun, Tasia. Thank you. Teno, yeah. Datwall. Oh, okay. Which counselor is it? Oh, okay, yeah. They have a different last name on here for some reason. Okay, yes, I have you. Great. Sorry, Teno. Thacker. Yes. Van Galen. Vezina. Watson. Woodside. Yan. Pratt. There. Chang is here. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so first I just want to welcome all the incoming counselors to their first official meeting once you're ratified. And to all the outgoing counselors, thank you for a great year. I've really enjoyed working with you and spending the council meetings with you. It's been a great honor. And to all of you who are also returning next year, good luck, have a great year, and same to the incoming counselors, and I'll be seeing you again for the meeting in April. Yeah, and also hello to all of our wonderful audience members. Thank you for joining us. And just finally, so as to, I had a couple questions about whether outgoing could defer their speaking rights to the incoming before the incoming are ratified. So according to Robert's rules, you can't defer your speaking rights to like anyone outside of council. However, I am willing to offer it up to the outgoing council for a vote. If you would like the opportunity to defer your speaking rights to the incoming, it is up to you. So at this time, I will take a vote. So those in favor of having the ability to defer your speaking rights to incoming council before they are ratified. So please, placards. Okay, that definitely looks like a majority. So I will allow that to happen during this meeting before the incoming are ratified. Okay, that's all from me. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. So are there any amendments to the agenda? Yes, President Shellabo.
I have two amendments to the agenda under the outgoing council, the LGBTQ2+ student issues committee motion, as well as the student experience committee motion.
Okay, any objections to those two amendments to the agenda? No? Okay. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, any objections to the agenda as amended? All right, seeing none, I will take it as approved, and we will move on to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any objections to the minutes from our last meeting of council? All right, seeing none, I will take those as approved as well. We will move on to our presentations this evening, or sorry, this morning, beginning off with a welcoming speech by Toby Shellabo, the outgoing USC president.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. Welcome to the 2018 Annual General Meeting of the University Students' Council. This is an opportunity to reminisce on some of the achievements of the year, as well as pass a baton on to our successors. So in writing this speech, I was a little nervous, to be honest, and I went back through a lot of past AGM speeches to see what I could take away from them to use today. And so I dove into my Google Drive to try and find a way to summarize a year in which so much has happened. And there was a common thread. Past presidents would go through the hot topics of their council and whatever had come up that year that people were talking about, that students were talking about, and that was contentious on council floor. In comparing their list to what ours would be, there really wasn't a comparison. And I don't say this lightly, because I even went to a lot of the staff of our organization and asked them, how do you think council was done this year? And they confirmed what I already thought to be true, with many of them saying this year is one of, if not the most active council that they have ever seen. The amount of work and conversation that has happened on council floor this year is truly tremendous, and every single one of you had a part to play in that. Many times we've sat in room 269, and that one time in the Mustang Lounge, on Wednesday nights, sometimes Thursday mornings, whether on a school night or on a romantic Valentine's Day with the budget. In that circle, we've exhausted pretty much every topic of discussion. From Radio Western to in-camera sessions to plants in the atrium to proper representation of all students, this group has continued to push the envelope and has more than anything made us as an executive and us as an organization work hard for the students at Western University. So I wanted to try and understand the keys to our success in the hopes that today I could provide some sort of roadmap for the next group to have the same success. Wow. And it came down to a few things. Firstly, to respect the role of a counselor or faculty president because it's not one to be taken lightly. In taking on this responsibility, you've made the commitment to represent your faculty and students in a way that very few others can. So every time you sit at a council meeting or a committee meeting, take it seriously. Read motions before showing up to the meeting. Pay attention during the meeting. But more importantly than anything, consult with the students that you represent and engage them in what you do, because this organization looks to this body to guide its day-to-day operations. And the 50-plus staff that work for the USC take their direction from you. Secondly, use committees. It will save you so much time. Every great conversation, disagreement, argument that you have at a committee level is one less one that you have to have on council floor. And as midnight approaches, you'll appreciate that more and more. Next, use your executive. This year, our relationship with council has been truly phenomenal. And it makes both of our lives a lot easier. The executive work 40 to 60 to 80 hours a week with this organization and want to hear what students would like to see, but more importantly, would like to hear what you would like to achieve. And there is no feeling more gratifying than having a counselor walk into your office and say, hey, I have this idea, what do you think? Because you could be honest with them, first of all, but then you know that once it comes to council floor, it's something that you've worked on together. Lastly, don't be scared to bring forward any idea that is working for students. This year, some of the most radical motions have turned into some of our coolest accomplishments. But even when they don't, they ensured that we had important conversations that allowed us to check our own bias and think about what students really wanted. Last year, I stood up here and questioned whether or not this organization worked for students and promised to keep us accountable to every student. And I can stand here and proudly say that not only are students at the forefront of everything that we do, but you as a council have kept me accountable to that, and I appreciate it more than you know. So to the outgoing council, never stop questioning, never stop working. This is a thankless role, but I thank you for all of your hard work. To next year's council, I wish nothing but the best of luck to each of you. Don't forget the reason that you took on this role in the first place, because that will push you through the rest of the year and at 2 in the morning. Think, more than anything, think independently, and don't let anything taint your autonomy in making what you think is the best decision for students, whether today or months down the road. To my executive, Landon, Aaron, Jana, Mac, our year has had its ups and its downs. But I wouldn't change my team for the world because each and every one of you are all-stars. Due to the experience we've had, and you guys know what I'm talking about, we'll be 20 years better off down the road. But today I sit and reflect on the tremendous work that each of you have done and should be proud of. And if you aren't, just know that I am, because I've had the pleasure of seeing the late nights, early mornings, and weekends that you put in for the betterment of any and every student. Thank you for everything you have taught me. To next year's executive, which is very almost complete. The next year will be crazy. It will take you for a ride, but you only get as much as you put in. So work hard and enjoy the fruits of your labor, and even when things get rocky, remember you have one of the coolest jobs in the world, and I truly do mean that. To our nervous, sick-spoke candidates at the back, every single one of you deserve the role. You have made the past 2 weeks challenging for everyone in this room, and for that alone, you deserve a round of applause. I have the pleasure of knowing each one of you personally, and no matter the results today, your time working for students is not done. Putting your name forward is scary, and I admire each and every one of you for that, and I hope that this experience has been rewarding to each of you. To Mitch, I am beyond ecstatic to hand over the reins of this organization to someone as capable as yourself. I have not been able to spend a ton of time with you, but every time I do, your maturity impresses me. And though I have no doubt that you will, lead with intelligence, morals, and a smile. Because the weight on your shoulders is heavy, but you do not bear it alone, and I'm excited to see the barriers that you will knock down and the new heights you will take this organization to. The USC has the ability to do for students what no other group can. Create an environment for the best and brightest to learn, experience, thrive, and ultimately change the world. And so for the experience that you have given me, I thank you. And without any further ado, I am honored to welcome the next USC president to say some words, Mitchell Pratt.
Sorry, give me 1 second here. Good morning, Council. So if you don't know me, I'll try not to lean on the podium. Sorry, I'm picturing campaign season again, standing up straight. So if you don't know me, my name's Mitch Pratt. Mitchell is what my mother calls me when she's angry at me, or if you want to be really serious with me, you can call me Mitchell as well. But I think we're all friends and family here, so you can call me Mitch. So thank you for all coming today at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning for a 7-hour meeting. But as the outgoing council will tell you, this is but a taste of what's to come. So after 2 long weeks of debates, and of course buzzwords, during campaign season, I'll do my best to spare you a platform talk today. Instead, as someone who's been involved in the USC since my first year, I can truly attest to the fact that it's not the policies that create positive change in this university, it's the people behind them. So today, I will be primarily be speaking about and to the people who make this organization work for the 30,000 students at this university. Of course, I would like to start by thanking this year's executive. Toby, Landon, Jana, Aaron, and Mac. Over the past few weeks, I've only had a small glimpse into what it's like working up on that 3rd floor. And I've seen the daily obstacles that must be faced. Toby said to me the other week, quoting an old president's outgoing report, who said that a USC executive is an individual who spends a full year working towards students' benefit and to the detriment of themselves. You truly put the interests of the students ahead of your own for an entire year, and for that, you have my utmost respect and my admiration. We all appreciate your hard work and dedication throughout the past year, and I'm looking forward to working with you over the coming months. Next to outgoing council. Well, guys, you made it. You're free. Joking. I don't want to scare the incoming counselors, but frankly, in my 4 years at Western, and I'm going to echo Toby's thoughts, this is the most dedicated and outspoken group of individuals I have had the pleasure of working with and witnessing on council floor. It has been a pleasure witnessing, watching you fight what's best for your faculty and the interests of all students. I wish you all the best in the future. And so, moving on to next year. Over the past 2 weeks, we've been involved in a rigorous hiring process for the Secretary, Treasurer, and the Communications Officer position. There were many qualified and passionate individuals who applied for these positions, and I thank them for their dedication to this school and these students. Without further ado, I would like to first introduce the next year's Communications Officer, Michaela Harrison. Michaela, can you stand up? In the past, Michaela has demonstrated its outstanding leadership capabilities as the Western's varsity lacrosse captain and a social science academic programming assistant. I have the utmost confidence in her to be able to manage me and make sure I don't say anything too silly next year. Next, I would like to introduce next year's incoming Secretary Treasurer. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Andrea Bijan, if you could stand up. Andrea? In the past, Andrea has been a USC counselor and a social science vice president of finance. I have the utmost confidence in her to kind of fully fulfill this position and be the policy wizard I know she is capable of being. For next year's incoming counselors, if you ever have a question or a doubt about a bylaw or the feasibility of an idea you would like to pursue, Andrea is the woman for the job. And to the SPO candidates scattered around the room today. Over the past week, I've had the pleasure of meeting with all of you and hearing your vision for the most student-facing portfolio within this executive. Never have I seen such driven, passionate, and above all, qualified individuals for this position. Next year's executive would be privileged to have any one of you on board. Good luck today, don't be nervous, and you certainly have given these counselors a lot to think about when it comes to voting. And to all the new counselors, I commend you for your courage and dedication for putting your name forward to represent your peers. Thank you for your dedication to the students. I just have a few words for you going forward. A lot of you probably don't know what the USC's vision statement is, and I only learned it a few weeks ago. But it follows as, students have the power to change the world. And I know what you're thinking, only the USC could make a tagline so corny. But as I started to break it down, it started to make more sense to me. Starting with the word student. You're student leaders, but remember, being a student comes first. Take care of yourself and take care of others. These positions are no small undertaking, and you truly get what you put into it. Hold me accountable not just as a peer, but as a student yourself for the betterment of this entire university, and hold the entire executive accountable for next year. Next, in terms of power. For me, the word power should truly mean empowerment on this council. If you ask anyone in this room, they give you a different definition of their time on council floor. The executive are here to empower each other and to empower you for next year, and never forget that. Never forget to come to us if you have any doubts, or you're feeling down, or if you want to pursue something in the name of your faculty. Always remember that the USC is not me, Danny, or the rest of the executive. It's all of you who make this council work. Next, change. Change can come from many places. Make sure to always look for the positive change we can see within this organization and work towards and work with each other to make sure that we can truly create positive change within this student experience. And finally, world. I feel like Western is a community of many different worlds. Truly, everyone has a different definition of it. Whether you're representing thousands of students in terms of programming, bespoke, or orientation, whether you're representing hundreds of students for clubs or anything else regarding that, or whether you're trying to make a change for one student's world in terms of accessibility, mental health, or even just acceptance or breaking down barriers on this campus. Never forget that you truly have the power to change each student's world on this campus and within your faculty. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby and Mitch, for those wonderful and inspirational words to outgoing and incoming council. We will now have the standing committee presentations from the chairs. We'll start with student experience. Yeah, if you'd like to come up. Thank you.
Hi, sorry about that. Usually I go last, so that was really confusing for me. So I just wanted to give a quick report, which didn't load on my phone, so I don't have it anymore, but that's okay. So I just want to address the incoming to let you know a little bit about what the Student Experience Standing Committee does. So generally, our mandate is to review a few of the USC programs every year. This year, we reviewed USC Accessibility, Charity Ball, and Peer Support Center. So what we do is we do some research, we talk to people, and we draft up recommendations, and we send them out to the people who can implement them. And yeah, so they've all been approved, and we've all sent them out, and it's been pretty good. I've gotten some pretty good feedback from the coordinators I sent them out to. Furthermore, we have the SPO as a resource member, so this is pretty cool with the SPO elections and all. And we generally receive some reporting from them about general programming, as well as we get a club's governance committee report as well, so we kind of know what's going on with clubs as well. And that's pretty much it. So yeah.
Okay, next we'll have the Advocacy Standing Committee.
Hey guys, so over the year we had a pretty good time on the Advocacy Standing Committee, going through local advocacy week. We got to meet with multiple city councilors, which was great. We met with the mayor and we pushed for multiple things such as a red light camera on the at the intersection of Western and Sarnia, and we pushed for, committing to improving near campus neighborhoods. And, we got a lot of great feedback from the councilors, so that's really great. We got a lot of involvement from councilors on the committee. And then looking at the policy papers, we got unanimous approval on council floor for affordability and student employment, which was great. And then, looking at further discussion for the equity and diversity paper for next year, which is also really good. Looking at current work, we are going to be writing the external relationships report. Sure. Basically looking at our relationship with USA and other organizations. And so we're waiting for the delegates to get back and talk to them about how it went. And then we'll finish the report. And yeah, that was our year.
And finally, governance and finance. Sure.
Hello. Lots of important stuff coming up today in the meeting. I hope everyone read everything beforehand. Also, please let it pass because it's late. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Thank you to all the standing committees. Now we will have the report from the Agenda and Council Operations Committee, which I am the chair of. So basically, we met the week before council every month and approved all of the agendas and yeah, made sure all the motions were complete and had a great time doing it. And that's pretty much it. All of the chairs of the standing committees sit on the Agenda and Council Operations Committee. For those of you of incoming who are looking to be in one of those chair positions, you will sit on that committee. And yeah, thank you. We will now move on to the first year Students Caucus presentation. Unless they are not here, in which case we will just move ahead with the agenda. Okay, so yeah. No. We still have one. Anyway, so moving on to our first for action item for outgoing council, the motion to amend bylaw 1. This motion was brought forward by Councillor Olson, and I will look for a seconder for this motion. Councillor Perruzza. Proxy for Councillor Olson, would you like to speak to this motion? Well, okay, Massimo, you're the seconder. Would you like to speak?
Hi. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, there's nothing really to speak on.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding this motion? All right, if there are no questions, we will now enter debate. Pardon? No, we don't. If there is no debate, yes, Councillor Hollenberg.
Motion to call the question.
Any objections to calling to question? Seeing none, we will call to question, and the polls are now open. And 3, 2, 1. Oh, just kidding. Okay, and polls are now closed, and the motion passes. Moving on to our next motion For the outgoing council, we have the motion to amend the council composition procedure. And this motion was brought forward by Councillor Olson, and I will look for a seconder. Councillor Perruzza. Proxy for Olson, would you like to speak to this motion? Sure. Councillor Crotchlow, would you like to speak to this motion?
Okay, this one's a bit more serious. So we're adding the WELC representative, which is the Western English Language Center, or something along those lines. That's what it is, right? Yeah, okay. Anyway, so we had like a subcommittee meeting for this. And then we approved it in governance and finance. Everything looks good. We're also changing the council composition numbers, which would change the representation. The actual numbers are outlined in the appendix. I don't have them memorized, but it's like it makes it a better representation for all students.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this motion? Yes, Councillor Chow.
Hi, can you guys kind of elaborate more, like where do you guys get the numbers, like the numbers, like is it like even numbers right now, like what's the difference like between like the new one and the old one composition wise?
Councillor Perruzza.
Massimo Perruzza, Arts President. So as it stands right now, the number of counselors is locked at 49, including the president and, no? No, it's including president. Yeah, 46 plus president and VP. And speaker, okay, yeah. And so these changes are to make it so it's no longer locked, but so that every faculty gets an extra counselor for every 1,000 students they have, plus like their one base counselor that they get, and then resource members.
Any other questions regarding this motion? If somebody from outgoing, sure. Just use the microphone.
So why is it that social science now has 3 less counselors? Does that just have to do with the number of students?
Councillor Perruzza, would you like to just speak to that?
Yes. And if one of the outgoing social sci counselors that were on the committee would like to speak to that further, and like for the reasoning for that, like Tom? No? Okay. Yeah?
Okay, so I think generally what this motion is so November 1st, they would take the numbers for how many students are for each faculty, and there's an equation within this, which you could see. So each faculty would get, and affiliate would get 1 seat on council, and then 1 extra seat for every 1,000 students. So that way everyone would get at least 1, but the rest would be more proportional to how many students there are at Western. And then, as you can see in the chart, that's how the composition would change if we took this year's numbers and applied them to next year, which would be exactly what we would do. So next year, some of the numbers would go down, and medicine, for example, would go up just because of how many students are enrolled.
Any other questions regarding this motion? Okay, seeing none, we will now enter a debate. Councillor Chow?
I'm speaking against this motion because I'm, as like the representative of Social Science Council, we will have 3 less seats on the council's floor. So I'm just speaking, like this motion kind of like will kind of shrink like representative from the social science students.
Councillor Hollenberg.
Councillor Hollenberg, law counselor, speaking for the motion. What this does is it makes it so that the number of representatives on council is reflective of the student body. So there may be some faculties which have fewer counselors. That's not to the detriment of that group. What it means is that that group is currently overrepresented within council. And this corrects that so that we can see a better representation of the student body on council, which means that we're going to hear more voices. The voices we hear are going to be louder for the smaller faculties. And overall, I think it will lead to better council. So speaking in favor.
Councillor Caracciolo.
Councillor Caracciolo, also speaking in favor, and just another addition onto that, this restructure also brings that adaptability on that constituent by constituency basis and will allow for that flexibility with the student numbers as we go forward.
Councillor Pratt.
Mitch Pratt, social science president. I'm a bit hesitant to debate this motion at AGM in terms of making such drastic changes to council floor. However, I am in favor of the motion in its current state. I just think in terms of the entire outgoing council being here, I'd almost look favorably upon tabling it to April 4th meeting as well. But I am speaking in favor of the motion in its current form because I do believe that providing this proportionality on council floor, I think, has been a long time coming, and it certainly has been a set cap on the number of councillors, and I do think that Governance and Finance has put a lot of work into this motion as well. Thank you.
So sorry, are you motioning to table or no? Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Pierce.
Beth Jackson, Education Students Council proxy for Meg Pierce, speaking against the motion for the very fact that as a professional school, our education faculty has doubled in size, but we don't meet the 1,000 students. But we're a professional faculty that students are not there at the same time. So right now we have one faculty or one representative representing 2 classes that don't even meet. So how is our one person supposed to represent 2 classes when there's different needs for those classes? So we have first and second years, and our president can meet the second years, or our representative can meet the second years, but when the first years aren't on campus at the same time, it's kind of hard. So I agree that it's good that the numbers can change and that it's not locked in. I think professional schools shouldn't have to meet that 1,000 cap because some professional schools aren't going to ever have 1,000 students, but we've doubled in size, but we're still staying one representative. So speaking against the motion.
Anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Tang.
Okay, so I'm going to speak in favor of this motion. Simply put, as a faculty that has one representative in the current system and who will essentially never have any opportunity to move up in terms of representation, what we're doing is instead we're cutting back on the total number, taking note that Western University Students' Council is one of the highest amounts of voting members in kind of all Canadian universities. UBC, which represents way more students than us, has 20 voting members on their council, and obviously we're way too bloated, seeing the number of acclamations into positions every year. So instead what we're doing is cutting down the numbers so proportionally our representation goes up. Instead of having a percentage of the total student population, which is what the current system is, it's done by how many students you actually have enrolled into your faculty. And that makes a lot more sense to me, and it's a system that most other schools use as well.
Councillor Griffith.
Tom Griffith, Social Science Council. So just to touch on the point of education, so again, it is based off of numbers, so I don't really see a more fair way to do that other than enrollment. As well, to add to that, this actually does bring down the total number of overall counselors, so proportionally, this is giving education more of a vote on council floor in the future.
President Shillabo.
Oh, sorry. I would just like to amend this motion, and I hope it's seen as friendly, to add a further, be it further resolved clause that these amendments become effective for the 2019-2020 council. Just making that completely clear so that this council doesn't run into any issues going forward. Pardon? 2019-2020. And I hope that's seen as friendly.
There's actually no such thing as a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
So I'll look for a seconder for that amendment.
It also, I would just like to point out that it also does say that it's for 2019. So yeah, if we'd like to change the wording a little bit to make it clearer, but all intentions of this was not to affect this council, to affect the selection of the next one.
Sorry, I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Moran? Are there any questions regarding this amendment? No? Is there any debate? All right. Seeing none, we will vote on this motion to amend to include 2019-2020 council. All those in favor of this amendment? Right? That is majority. It's only outgoing councillors who are voting. Oh, sorry, you're... Yeah. Great, so that motion to amend passes. So now we will return to vote on the original motion as amended. Councillor Perruzza?
Massimo Perruzza, Arts President. I'd like to motion to divide the question. So the council composition number changes as one question and the WELC representative portion as another.
Okay. Can I get a seconder for dividing the question? Councillor Pratt? Okay, so first we will debate the councillor composition question and then followed by WELC.
Sure.
Yeah. So is there any debate regarding the councillor composition portion of the question? Councillor Hollenberg?
Motion to call the question.
Sure. Any objection to calling to question? Right, seeing none, we will call to question. We're going to need to have two. So. All right, polling is now open for the motion.
Point of information really quickly, sorry. So just to be clear, this is voting on the council composition part.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
cool. Cool.
So go ahead and vote. Okay. Polls are closed and the motion passes. We will now debate the second part of the question, which is the WELC representative. Is there any debate with regards to that? Councillor Perruzza?
I think the intention for the WELC representative was to have specifically the WELC rep be elected next year, like to be in place for next year, whereas the council composition changes would take effect for the next election. So like the motion that we just passed was for 2019, 2020, and the WELC part is for 2018, 2019. Yeah. So
Okay.
can we amend the motion? Because right now it says the whole thing is for
Yeah,
2018.
so now for the WELC representative is for the 2018, 2019. Are there any objections to that amendment? Okay, seeing none, I will take it as approved. And is there any debate with regards to the WELC representative? Okay, we will call to question then. Okay, polls are now open. All right, and the motion passes. Okay, we will now move on to our third motion, the motion to amend bylaw 2. This motion was brought forward by Councillor Olson, and I will look for a seconder. Councillor Perruzza. Proxy for Councillor Olson, would you like to speak to this motion? Okay, Councillor Perruzza, would you like to speak to this motion? No? Okay. Are there any questions regarding this motion? All right, seeing none, we'll move into debate. And seeing no debate, we will call to question on this motion. Polls are now open. Okay, we're just missing one more. All right, 3, 2, 1. Polls are closed and the motion passes unanimously. Now moving on to our next motion, the motion to amend the EGC violations procedure. This motion was brought forward by Councillor Olson, and I will look for a seconder. Councillor Perruzza. Proxy for Councillor Olson, would you like to speak to this motion? Okay, Councillor Perruzza, would you like to speak to this motion? Are there any questions regarding this motion? Seeing none, we will move into debate. Yes, President Shellabo.
So, I'm going to motion to table this for a few reasons. The first of which being, this is really going to change our elections in a way that I don't think has been fully flushed out. It puts the EGC in a position where some of the decisions that they would need to make, they wouldn't have the proper means to be able to justify. So for example, with the current demerit point system, when you hit 30 demerit points, you are disqualified. Under these changes, in order for a candidate to be disqualified, it would just have to be seen as a major violation. And my worry with that is that it would put the EGC in a position where they would either feel uncomfortable disqualifying a candidate that should be disqualified, or they would end up, or candidates that really should not be disqualified would be, and the justification for it would be pretty subjective, as opposed to our current system where there's an objective way of saying this candidate should be disqualified. So my worry is that we're putting students in a position to make decisions that really do have wide-reaching implications, but aren't giving them the ability to properly justify those decisions. And while I think that, yes, our elections do need some reform, I think that these changes may not be the best way to go about it, and there should probably be some more discussion about it. And I wouldn't like to sit here on Council Floor and argue to change and change and change and change at AGM. And that's why I think this may be a motion that's better tabled to the April 4th meeting to allow the next council to read through in committee meetings as well as discuss and find the best way forward. So motion to table.
Okay. I will look for a seconder for that motion to table to the April 4th meeting. Councillor Pratt. Are there any questions regarding that? Okay, any debate? Councillor Perruzza.
Massimo Perruzza, Arts President. In terms of it, you're saying like it's not fleshed out. We had the governance review subcommittee work on this for a while. Then we brought it to Governance and Finance Standing Committee. We also reviewed it there. Everyone approved it. It seemed like the changes were positive and that everyone thought that they were a good idea. I don't see a need to table this when we've already, I guess, discussed it at length and feel like it's ready to bring forward to council floor.
Proxy for Councillor Olson.
As the proxy for Councillor Olson, I would just like to point out and echoes the sentiments that it has been thoroughly discussed. And on top of that, this is a system that has been looked at from the University of Calgary where it works. So I think that basically it has been tried at a different university, and that is why Governance Committee wanted to bring this to the table today.
Any further debate on this motion? Councillor Ali.
President, Councillor Ali, Health Sci President. So I would like to echo President Shelbo's comments, I guess. Even though the Governance and Finance Committee has thoroughly gone through the changes, I would still say that we should table it till the April 4th meeting to have the incoming council go through the entire changes. Yeah.
Councillor Tang.
So I'm going to speak against tabling this motion simply because although tabling it to the April 4th meeting would allow incoming council to contemplate these changes, what it does not allow for is for certain members of the outgoing council who were privy to the discussions and the planning of this motion to directly address any concerns that they bring up at that meeting time.
Councillor Caracciolo.
Councillor Crutchlow, and yet speaking against this motion, echoing some of the sentiments and all the work that's been done, and in addition to that, I feel like this is, it seems to me like it's more coming from a place of being concerned with how the changes are versus necessarily not being proper due diligence. I think the due diligence is done very thoroughly, and I think there's a lot of merit in this motion to be debated on the actual motion, and I think tabling it will just be repetitively repeating conversations.
Any further debate? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on the motion to table this motion to the April 4th meeting. That will be done by placards. So all those in favor of the motion to table. Okay, sorry, just really high. Okay, all those against? Sorry, really high. Yeah, I got you. Any abstentions? Is anyone abstaining? No. All right. Thank you for bearing with us. Sorry. So we had 18 for the motion and 20 against the motion. And seeing as there are 39 outgoing councillors, and this motion requires majority plus one, it requires 20 plus one. So the motion fails, as I also vote against. Okay, so we will return back to voting on the original motion, or sorry, debating on the original motion. Is there any debate? Councillor Crutchlow?
Yeah, so Councillor Crutchlow, and so with the original motion, a lot of the benefits with this system are when you have that 30-point demerit system, it can encourage candidates to basically, I want to call it cheat, essentially cheat like as much as you can up until the limit. When you have this major minor, it makes it more principles based. It makes it more of a thing where more of a barrier to go and effectively break election rules. And so that's a lot of the benefits with this system and why it's pretty solid.
President Shillabo?
Speaking against the motion, and there's just a few scenarios with this that worry me. First of all, the chain of events that could happen through minor and major violations in times when certain candidates may not have been the favored to win, or that sense. It basically allows the EGC to disqualify a candidate without many steps being taken to get there. I understand that we trust our EGC to make the right decisions, and that's why our demerit point system at the moment works, because our EGC assigns the right amount of demerit points for the actions that have been done. At the moment, some of the ways that you can penalize candidates for the major violations that are there are quite problematic. For example, one of the major violations is refusing to follow the EGC's decision, which is fair, but the EGC also has the power to completely pause any campaign activity for any period of time, which is quite a bit of power to give one group. And if that wasn't followed, then they have the ability to disqualify that candidate on the spot. And so at the moment, I'm speaking against the motion.
Okay. Councillor Perruzza?
I'd like to defer my speaking rights to Erin McCauley.
From a governance standpoint, I think that though there are risks associated with this, there are flaws to every system, so perhaps trying a new one could work. I know that there's a caution where without having a certain number of points for disqualification, there is the possibility of a lawsuit. However, EGC does currently have the power to allow any sanctions, so they could currently pause someone's campaign or take away their campaign materials or apply any sort of variety of sanctions. I'm sure that the schedule that will be released prior to the elections period will act very similar to the demerit point system. It will just eliminate the title of the demerit point system. So it'll be sort of $10 increments of financial levies as opposed to $10 associated with the demerit point. So from that standpoint, I think that this system could work.
Councillor Tang?
Kyle Tang is president. So I just want to bring up the fact that regardless of the changes that come to the EGC violations procedure, we still have an appeals board in place. So regardless of the decision that comes down from EGC, it's not like these decisions cannot be appealed. And if we don't have trust in kind of both the bodies, the EGC and the appeals board, then why do we have them in the first place?
Proxy for Councillor Olson?
I think that one of the things that happened in the recent election, I think the Gazette article posted, and it said that the demerit point system was very much like a currency for violating and trying to get as many votes. And I think that that's kind of the spirit of not having that be said about our system and just trying something new. And I'd also like to remind everyone that there is a bit of time that we can make minor changes to this policy with the incoming councillors before we actually get fully into the elections procedure. So there is a bit of time to make small changes to this if we see that there's like any sort of gaps. But I believe that this committee did their due diligence in evaluating this in the first place.
Councillor Griffith.
Tom Griffith, Social Science Counselor. So one of the things that came up pretty frequently when we were debating this in our Governance and Finance Committee was that due to the nature of the Elections Governance Committee and the high turnover it exhibits, we observed like a very small precedence in how demerit points are applied year to year. You'll often see the same type of violation receive maybe double or 1/2 or 1/4 of demerit points, depending on who's on the committee. So building off that with what's been said about a liability and having to have concrete grounds on disqualification, given sort of the inconsistency in applying demerit points, and you know, in times past we've had people appeal against every single demerit point that was launched in a campaign, having to justify 30 separate unique demerit points versus having to justify one minor or major violation is sort of a lot simpler to move forward with for the Elections Governance Committee. And echoing Andrea's sentiment, the way that we viewed the current demerit point system sort of is like institutionalized cheating. In the current system, if you don't rack up 20, 25 demerit points, it poses the question, why didn't you? It's free violations and there's not much to stop you. And as I'm sure all of you saw, demerit points were ridiculed in I think 2 separate articles in the Gazette this past election season. So clearly it is something that people are concerned about. So I think there is a need for this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Watson, Hillside Councillor. So just echoing sort of the sentiments of some fellow councillors that I've heard, I think that in retort to what people have said against this motion, I think people who think against this motion that, you know, it gives certain bodies too much power, I think that is in bad faith of the EGC and the appeals board. I think that there's a lot of ways that can deal with if we have that problem at the time. And I think that implementing the system is in good faith of the EGC. I think it puts faith in like the systems that we already have other than the demerit point system, which we have seen problems with. And so with that, I would like to call the question.
Okay, we do have one final counselor on my list. Are there any objections to calling to question? Okay, seeing none, we will call to question on this motion. And polls are now open. Okay, polls are closed, and the motion passes. Okay, moving on to our next motion, the LGBTQ2+ Special Committee of Council. I will look for a mover and a seconder to this motion, President Shelbo and Councillor Watson. President Shelbo, would you like to speak to this motion?
Let me speak. So really just a motion to extend the length of time that the LGBTQ2+ ad hoc committee that we had this year. It was a really effective body of people and great conversations and a lot of great meetings came from it. So would like to see it last at least another year. So the motion is just to have that terms of reference be ratified as a special committee or as a student issues committee, not a standing committee, not something that could potentially be here forever, but something that will continue for the next academic year.
Councillor Watson, would you like to speak to this motion?
Lucy Watson, Health Sci Counselor. As the chair of the LGBTQ2+ ad hoc committee, hopefully we're all present and listening, or at least saw the meeting minutes for what we accomplished this past year. We really got a huge insight into all of the various issues that the LGBTQ2+ community faces. We've had some great improvements this year, and there's a lot that we want to try and fix for next year to try and make the overall student experience better for just everyone in many, many aspects, including student health, housing, and so on and so forth. So I really hope I have all of your support in extending this committee. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this motion? Okay, we'll now enter into debate. Yes, Councillor Pratt? Any objections to calling to question? Seeing none, we will proceed with the vote. And polls are now open. All right, and polls are closed, and the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to our next motion, the Student Experience Standing Committee. I will look for a mover and a seconder for this motion, President Shelbo and Councillor Zhu. Are there any questions? Oh, sorry, President Shelbo, would you like to speak to this motion?
I'll speak again on this one. Sorry for so much new business, but Student Experience Standing Committee currently receives a report at the end of the year about what CGC has done or is working on, and it just doesn't make sense that we don't get the input of our counselors and of our student representatives about what CGC should be focusing their year on at the start of the year. There's a small change in the terms of reference just to have that report and discussion happen in September. So a report on what happened in the previous 12 months, but then also a discussion about what CGC should be focusing on and what the goal should be moving forward going into the academic year to best support clubs.
Councillor Zhu, would you like to speak to this motion? Oh, okay. Are there any questions regarding this motion? Seeing none, we will now enter debate. Seeing no debate, we will call to question. And polls are now open. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Polls are closed, and the motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to our next motion. The ratification of the 2018-2019 Council. I will look for a mover and a seconder for this motion, Councillor Watson and President Shelbo. Councillor Watson, would you like to speak to this motion? President Shelbo, would you like to speak to this motion? Are there any questions regarding this motion? Yes, Councillor Bruzza.
What happens if we don't ratify them?
We'll be here for a long time. Any other questions? We will now enter debate. And seeing no debate, we will call to question on the ratification of the new council. Oh, it's just by placard voting, so all those in favor of ratifying the new members of council. Okay, that is majority, so the motion passes to ratify the new members of council. Okay. Okay, so we will move on to our first for action for both councils, the Student Programs Officer elections. I will look for a mover and a seconder for this motion. Councillor Perruzza and Councillor Ma. So before we begin, I just want to elaborate on how this is going to play out. So each SPO candidate will have 5 minutes to address council in alphabetical order by last name. Then they will have the opportunity to answer 2 direct questions from council floor, and I will be identifying who from council will be able to ask those questions. Then we will have a group forum setting where questions will be fielded by me from both council and the audience. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to this question, and it will be in alphabetical order. And then following the last response, if a fellow candidate has mentioned someone in their response, that candidate that was mentioned will be able to respond for 30 seconds. And then the balloting will occur after the completion of the group forum. They will be counted immediately after submitted, and then the winners will be announced at the end. The winner will be announced at the end of the meeting. Any questions with regards to how this is going to work? No? Okay. Do we have the ballots? Yeah.
That was super loud. So sorry. There's 2 portions to your ballot. There's a portion I keep and there's a portion that you will be using. I will know which portion is yours. It's numbered, so I have a list that has your number and your ballot will be associated to you, and that's how I'll be able to track it back to who voted for whom. And then, so the scrutineers will not be able to know. There's no names on your ballots, just a 6-digit number. And then I will take, obviously the CRO will be going through the ballots, and then at the end of the day, I will go through them and I will transpose your voting. And then if anyone asks for it, they'll be able to have it, but not for a few days, so don't ask tomorrow. I'm gonna take my time with it, like a week. So don't email me tomorrow because I'm not gonna give it to you, even if I have it done. Okay. I have 10 days, Massimo Perruzza. That's what I said too. Is that a... All right? Does that make sense? Okay.
All right. Fine. Okay, everyone. Sorry about that. I just needed a list of the candidates. So we will start it off with Benjamin Abnett as our first SPO candidate who will address council.
All right. Good morning, everyone. First off, I'd just like to thank you guys all for being here. It's nice to see some bright and smiling faces, even though the time change kind of took a toll on us. So really great to see all of you guys out here. So to start, my name is Benjamin Abnett. Some of you guys may know me as Ben, maybe the guy that almost won the Spoke Bagel contest, the guy that went to the top of UC Tower, maybe the guy that went as Chad Kroger from Nickelback during Halloween. But ultimately, I think all you guys know me as a student, just as you guys are. So the past 4 years of my university career has been all about getting as involved in school and getting as involved in extracurriculars as I possibly can. So my involvement in extracurriculars started in first year right off the bat with the Purple Spur. It gave me a chance to kind of realize like all the great things that student leaders such as yourselves are doing, and I kind of got to see that through the second, third, and fourth year students there. From there, I got involved in many other things. The Health Sci Soft team, finishing off as the events PA there. So running a seamless faculty day was a real pleasure. And it was great to see all the first years kind of enjoy that, the ones in Health Sci. The next thing I got involved with was Generosity, so a live music-based charity organization. I got to speak with a lot of you guys about that. So a cool, not necessarily USC-based experience. And then the last thing really kind of tying me to the USC was my time as kin counselor. So it's been amazing being able to kind of voice the concerns of kin, as well as just hear what's going on with other students and really kind of get to hear that student voice. With that, I think my experience is unique in that it's not just USC experience. I have experience from other aspects of university, and I think this is really something to look at. My goal with this campaign and running through it has been really to focus on the students and realize that it's you guys, it's student leaders like you guys that are creating this student experience here at Western. As much as the SPO is somebody that facilitates that and is somebody that kind of can give those opportunities to get involved, I really think that it's student leaders like yourselves that are making the student experience happen for others, and I really want to commend you guys on that. So with that, like I said, I think something that stands apart is my experience and just the way that I've kind of gone about this time, my campaign. And with that, I'd kind of like to finish it off by thanking all of you. It's been a pleasure to meet the counselors and incoming, outgoing. It's been a pleasure to work with you guys throughout the entire year. A pleasure to meet everybody and see all the great things that you guys are in for, because it's a really great time being on council and kind of really understanding what the USC does for students. So I'd like to thank you guys. I'd like to really let you know that you guys are the ones making this student experience. And as much as the Student Programs Officer portfolio is the one that it's student facing, I can facilitate those needs. I really think that it's you guys that are creating that. So with that being said, I really hope that with the ones I met, you guys liked the things I had to say. With the ones that I didn't, hopefully I can kind of win you over through this time that we have later, as well as my platform that I've given out. So thank you guys. I hope to be at the top of your ballot or as close as possible. And yeah, so make sure to vote for Ben. Thank you guys.
Great, thank you, Ben. We actually have 2 direct questions first from council. So if anyone would like to ask a question of Ben. Okay, if there are no questions, then thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And we will now have, oh, yes, Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question. Thanks for that one, Mitch. Something I think that really differentiates me, there's a couple things. One of them being my leadership style, that transformational leadership style. Something I've worked towards throughout my entire university career, and that's just kind of the way that I function. And I think it fits really well with the SPO portfolio, and that it's these associates and student leaders and coordinators that are the ones that help facilitate that student experience. So I really think that being able to empower those students and kind of let them know that like they are the ones doing that, I really think that's important. Another thing, like I've kind of mentioned in my little address there, was the idea that it's not just that USC experience that is going to make an effective student programs officer. I think that's great. I think that's important. But in my case, I really think it's something that I've been able to get involved with students and a student experience that isn't only created by the USC. So I think that that's really something to think about, kind of being able to know what those students want, being able to see that they're able to create a student experience for themselves as well as others. So I'd say that's something that outside experience as well. So yeah, thanks for that.
Does anyone else have one more question? No? Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now have Rochelle Akins.
All right. Hope everyone can see me up here. So hi everyone, my name is Rochelle Akins and I am also running to be your next Student Programs Officer. I want to thank everyone who took the time to get to know me better this week or to read through my platform and ask questions. The person in this role will lead a large team, foster many important relationships, and act as one of the most student-facing USC executives. It is important that the person you choose to fill this role is experienced, approachable, and prepared for the year ahead, and I'm confident that I'm that person. My experience starts in first year when I came to university ready to be involved in as much as I could. Right from the get-go, I was engaged in 2 charity-based clubs in the former USC Health and Wellness Committee. And with these interests in mind, having had a positive relationship with my SOF, I then applied to the orientation program and was accepted as one of 4 first-year students for the charity orientation team. As a Shine Around coordinator, I discovered how much I loved event planning and being part of a team. I realized that while this team was successful in our fundraising initiatives, there were major flaws in how we ran our programming, and that students were not satisfied. I was offered the position as a programming assistant in my second year, which further expanded my programming skills, but also offered me my first position as a student leader. Though our small changes to Shine-A-Rama were successful that year, I knew our team had the capacity to do better. As the charity orientation coordinator, I took on a role where I could make real change and lead our immensely passionate team effectively. This year, we changed the culture of Charity and Orientation Week based around listening to students and concerns and responding to them. Taking student feedback to heart and thinking critically about making this program accessible to all students, we shifted the philosophy of charity from fundraising to time raising. The shift is being represented across campus now and receiving interest from other universities too. This year, the Charity SOF team entered into a partnership with the Student Success Center and collaborated to make Orientation Serves Day. Allowing our first years to be involved in their new London community and have a tangible volunteer experience through OSERVS has been beneficial for both students and the London community members. While this program has many areas for improvement, it has developed strong roots within our program, and I owe this to our strong team dynamic and collaboration efforts. Going into my 4th year, I wanted to broaden my horizons and be involved with campus-wide programming. As the associate programming, I work with 7 diverse and passionate student leaders to support them in their unique programming goals. Beyond this, I get to be involved with a range of large-scale programming from the Tri-Side Concert to the Remembrance Day ceremony. Through this experience, I have seen how the SPO role looks on a daily basis and understand that it is both challenging and rewarding. As a student who has been able to be involved in so many areas on campus, I recognize that there are even more students who have been unengaged with the USC. My platform and goals were set with both the hyper-involved and less involved students in mind, and reaching more students will be a goal throughout my entire term. I want to emphasize that while the SPO is responsible for programming, they are also a team builder, a budget manager, and a campus relationship builder. My experience in leading the orientation program through a culture shift, working with other stakeholders in programming, and supporting a variety of teams and individuals had prepared me well to take this position on. With the SPO portfolio being so large and student-facing, I believe that the personal characteristics and leadership capabilities of the person you elect are equally as important as the platform ideas they present. While I believe my platform provides a solid starting point on issues I want to address, I'm excited to work with students to make my platform a reality. I will work tirelessly to make sure the entire portfolio feels empowered to achieve their own goals and will turn to these individuals as expert in their fields. I understand that a leader is only as good as their team, and I'm excited to work with and learn from the SPO portfolio, students, and council this year. I am ready to be the support figure that this portfolio needs, to be the resource member that council requires, and to provide engaging programming that all students can be a part of. I hope that the conversations I've had with many of you in these past 2 weeks are just the beginning stages of our relationships, and thank you for your time.
Councillor Campbell. Oh, I have.
Ann Campbell, Social Side Counselor. Well, thank you for speaking with us, Rochelle. Sorry, I think we all appreciate it. On to your point, provide a pro-choice voice on campus. Do you believe that by the USC taking a stance on this issue that it's then isolating people that don't believe that? And then a follow-up question is, how have you consulted with the Women's Issues Network and the Peer Support Center? Because in your platform it says that they would be the ones that would be taking on this as per your direction.
Yeah, so my experience this year, I saw how much time it took out of Jana and Mac's day when the Pro-Life Club had their booth on campus, and I saw how many students were actually affected by this. So I saw this as a gap on campus, and I kind of realized this through my role. So I think in terms of pro-choice, this isn't pro-abortion, and that stance is really different for me. Pro-choice means we're recognizing that half of the students on our campus are females, and as the USC, we empower them to be and do everything they want, and we should be giving them the resources and support that they can make this choice for their own. To me, this isn't saying pro-life or pro-choice. This is saying, you can make this decision yourself, and we're only hearing one side of the story right now. We're only hearing this pro-life story, and I recognize that involvement in that club is really important for those members, and I would never discredit their involvement in that. So I really want to provide two sides of the story. I think the Women's Issues Network, to me, seems like a great place to start because if it's not a women's issues, whose issue is it? So I really like to involve them in that, and the Peer Support Center is generally under-advertised, so I'm excited to involve them in providing that support for students who do end up coming to Mac and Jana, or Michaela and whoever the new SPO is. So I hope to include them in that sense. I think in talking to everyone, I've realized that maybe, this is a point I definitely want to address in my term, but there is other options. So whether it's holding a forum where we can have both sides discuss and we can actually debate this and have some real conversations, or maybe it's encouraging that a club emerges as the pro-choice club. So I'm definitely open to options, and I'm excited to work with more students in fulfilling that platform point. But to me, it's about providing that choice to students. And if you're a first year and you're walking through the atrium and you see that booth, maybe that's the only voice you've heard. So making sure that we're getting both sides of that dialogue is really important to me.
Just a follow-up to that one.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify,
Mm-hmm.
so have you consulted with the Women's Issue Network and Peer Support Center yet, or is that something that you hope to do?
So that's something I hope to do. Obviously, Karina is the current coordinator, so I was hoping to consult with her about this point, but then found out she was running. So, but anyways, yeah, I think that's something obviously I want to do. But I think it's even going beyond that and consulting with students and talking about the students that are affected and what they'd like to see. I also think it's important that we're making students aware that this club is having a booth, since it is very affecting for some students. So I hope to consult with the Peer Support Center volunteers, all 40 of them, and I hope to consult with the new Women's Issues Network coordinator once they're chosen.
Anyone else have a second question? Yes, Councillor Danesi.
So I know you talk a lot about the culture shift you kind of implemented during orientation from this kind of fundraising to time-raising philosophy. I'm curious if you can elaborate on whether or not you believe it's directly translatable to USC charity, and whether kind of your charity philosophy in general and how you're going to shift it if you get this position.
Cool, thank you, Peter. So yeah, this is something we talked about, but I think it's definitely important. So in orientation, I felt like this shift was really necessary. When we come and you're in residence, to be able to fork out $20 for a charity shirt, especially in orientation week, it adds up. And so for me, that was a shift where we wanted to show students what volunteering is at Western. It's not just giving your money to causes, it's donating your time. So as an initial event, when you come to Western, that was really impactful, and that was the direction we took. In terms of USC charity, I think we can build off this. I know Relay for Life yesterday was very successful, raised over $60,000, which is great, and that's what the Canadian Cancer Society needs is funding. But recognizing that local organizations need those hands and boots on the ground help, and so Children's Holiday Party is always successful in the fact that you're just donating your time. So building off that, I know that that's a successful event. So making sure that we're kind of getting both of those aspects, recognizing that larger charities oftentimes need money and smaller charities need money too. But donating your time is just as important as donating your dollars, because not everyone can. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Next, we will have Karina Gabriel. There's only 2 direct questions permitted at this time. Oh, okay. There's no time limit on the direct question, but there's a time limit for the group forum. Pardon?
Is someone going to be timing them later on?
I am timing them.
Okay, thank
yes.
you.
There's a 1-hour time limit on the entire election process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Welcome, Karina.
Good morning, everyone. In my first year, I was so nervous to be away from home. On my first day at Western, the first day of O Week 2014, the first Western students I met were Sophs. Upon driving up to Perth Hall, I stopped being afraid just long enough to look up and spot so many brightly colored uniforms, singing and calling for first years to come out of the car. It was at that moment I remember not being so nervous anymore. When the Sophs came to get me out of my car, suddenly it was me telling my parents it's okay, instead of the other way around. Even though I'm currently only a couple months away from graduating, I still remember that moment from my first day at Western so vividly as the first interaction with the place I would call home for the next 4 years. It was also my first interaction with the student programs portfolio. Over the course of the rest of my undergraduate career, I've had the opportunity to interact, work within, and work alongside the student programs officer in multiple capacities. I've always been astonished with how far-reaching the SPO's portfolio programming is on our campus and how many of our students interact with the portfolio every day. For example, our orientation program introduces first-year students to Western's vibrant community and prepares them for the next 4 years and beyond. This is why I've committed to integrating more mental wellness and sexual violence prevention resources and removing barriers for Sophs in participating with the program. Another example of SPO's outreach is in our club system, where literally thousands of our students interact with the USC on a daily basis. I recognize this, I reached out, I heard clubs' concerns, and because of this, I'm dedicated to structurally addressing these problems. Building my platform was an incredible experience where I met with many individuals who shared their perspectives on how we can make our Western community a more inclusive, inspiring, and welcoming space. The result is a compilation of knowledge accumulated over 4 years of extracurricular and leadership experience, dozens of meetings with VP student events across campus, UC coordinators and associates, and endless questions, follow-up phone calls, and messages to ensure I accurately captured the experiences of our student leaders. During my meetings with each of you, some themes emerged. Lots of you were interested in how I could help facilitate collaboration among student leaders across campus, how I could work to prioritize mental wellness, how I envision supporting our HBK students, how I will provide effective and strong communication during my term, and how quickly I will get rid of Western Link. I strongly believe that the role of SPO is to support our student leaders, whether that be clubs, faculty councils, HBK students, our Ivy students, the USC, professional schools, or internally in my own portfolio with the coordinators and associates. I've taken all of your suggestions and feedback throughout this process, and I've integrated them into my plans and goals for the future of the SPO portfolio. I hope that through my well-researched and realistic platform, my extensive experience, my dedication to student wellness, and the passion I have for this portfolio, you will elect me to work alongside you as the next student programs officer. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone like to ask a question of Karina? No questions? Okay. Oh, yes, Councillor Rocchese.
Hi. So my question is, what do you think is the most important part of your platform?
The most important part of my platform. Thank you, Vanessa. I would say that, well, of course, the student programs officer portfolio is rather large, and like I mentioned even in my speech, that it integrates so many different communities on our campus. However, something that I would say is particularly important in going forward, and it also relates really well with the Pratt Chang platform as well, is my sexual violence prevention and the things that I've already done working with outgoing council, and I would like to continue working on in the future. So I definitely say that's a very important part of my platform, and I look forward to working on it.
One final question for Karina. All right. If there aren't any, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll have our next candidate, Tamara Klokich.
Hi, everybody. Oh, get this taller. My name is Tamara Klokich, and I'm very excited to get today started because I'm running to be your next student programs officer. 4 years ago, when I was a young first-year student, I put my name in to run for a psychology dep rep position for our council. I sat in my concrete room in Saugie and Maitland Hall and wrote a speech about how much I liked my program and how much I wanted to get involved at Western. The day of the AGM, I woke up, looked in the mirror, and decided not to go. I was too nervous that I was going to make a fool out of myself, and I really let a cool experience go by. 3 years since then, I've grown into a human who is standing in front of you today, running a campus-wide campaign in a position that I never could have imagined myself being in before. Am I still nervous to make a fool of myself? Absolutely. But the person in front of you today is also strong, confident, empowered, and extremely qualified. And this growth was facilitated by many of the programs that the USC provides, and in particular the SPO. From clubs to the REACH program to being a SOPH for 3 years, the person I am today in front of you is all due to the USC. The SPO is responsible for managing the student-run services and programs that contribute to the Western experience for the entire student body. That student body includes constituents who are incredibly diverse individuals with different perspectives, experiences, wants, and needs. I think it's vital then to the role that the SPO is accountable to all students across faculties, affiliates, and professional schools, and that every student feels that the SPO has a program that they can feel connected with, just like I did. My platform is created on the foundation of accountability, empowering student leaders, and engaging with the disengaged student body. This is why I created an entire section to commit to better working relationships with faculty, affiliate, and professional school councils, why I display a comprehensive outlook on clubs and orientation, 2 programs that continue every year and have an impact on the future of this campus, why I value a variety of events such as the Winter Market or Bachelor Mondays at the Wave, events that students are going to remember at the end of their year, why I limit my section on programs and peer programs to ensure that those student leaders have the autonomy for their creative vision to come to fruition, and why the detail and information within my platform is feasible and forward-looking, as seen by my distinction between long-term goals and long-term strategies and short-term goals. I know things can happen when you're SPO, that you can get caught up with an event, a program, or a concert, but this way I'm accountable to you and your constituents, and also the Gazette during my end-of-year review. I've seen firsthand how the dedication to all student experiences instead of my own applies while being in several different roles. Firstly, as the USC Associate Clubs, I realized that any policy I enacted wasn't just a check off of my to-do list, but how my decisions could impact the defining moments for thousands of students on campus today. I believe it's crucial to have somebody in this position that understands the club system and specifically issues like insurance and or policy to ensure when changes need to be made, you have someone who knows what they're doing and can stay consistent with the long-term strategies already put into place. As the current Social Science Students Council AVP events, funny how life works and I end up in the exact places I tried to start, I have also seen the importance of collaboration while being involved with the massive success of the Tri-Sci Daniel Caesar concert. I was able to see the value in events that engage all students and make students feel proud to be part of the USC. Finally, as a member of the Appeals Board for several years, I've developed strong values of justice, fairness, and due process. Yes, this will help me in my day-to-day decisions as SPO, but as one of 5 20-year-olds running a multi-million-dollar corporation and making decisions that are going to affect the entire student body, you can be confident that every decision we make, I will do my due diligence to ensure that it is the best and fairest possible. I have proven my ability to achieve results and make effective changes for the entire student body. If you place your confidence in me and elect me as your next student programs officer, I assure you that your concerns will become my concerns. I look forward to working together to getting more students engaged with the USC and making sure our programs are facilitated in the most productive manner possible. And before I end, I just have 2 thank yous. So thank you to my mom who is watching on the live stream, even though I asked her not to because it makes me nervous. Hi, Mom. And then finally, thank you to all of you today for your time, not just in front of me, but over the past couple of weeks. I know with so many candidates and platforms to read that it can be a lot of time and commitment to set aside. So I really, really thank you for your consideration and dedication to making the most informed decision that you can make this year.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Tamara? Okay, if there are no questions, we'll move on to our next candidate.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, next up we have Alex Marshall.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I am Alex Marshall, and surprise, I am running to be your next Student Programs Officer. I'd like to start off my address by acknowledging the hard work each of my fellow candidates have put into their platforms and their campaigns. These individuals are some of the most experienced, talented, and hardworking student leaders our campus has to offer, and as such, we should be celebrating them. I would also like to thank them for their continuing good nature during our campaign period and making it so enjoyable. Western and I are certainly better for having you. I would also like to thank you, the council. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had the chance to sit down with many of you to discuss my platform and answer questions. All the while getting a better understanding of what it is that makes a good student programs officer great. These meetings and having the opportunity to connect with some of Western's best and brightest truly mean the world to me, and I hope that it is only the beginning. To me, the SPO position isn't one of governance, but of leadership. A leader who works with students to produce a collective vision for programming should support and empower associates and coordinators. The goal is to ensure that these students are not only successful in implementing their programming, but enjoy doing so. During my half-decade at Western, I've seen the common misconception within the greater student body that the USC exists to serve itself, not its students. And I've witnessed firsthand how difficult it can be to break into that USC bubble. As SPO, I want to entertain, educate, and provide equal opportunity, ensuring all voices are heard on our campus. Together, we can show students that we are working with them. I've learned much during my involvement with the USC. As a SOPH, the power of teamwork. As an orientation staff member, the importance of adaptability. On USC Charity, I learned the lessons of patience and perseverance. As the first ever USC Hype Team coordinator, I honed my skills in managing a team. With every experience, I gained critical insight into the responsibilities of the SPO. I got to see how all of the 5 unique portfolios come together to shape our student experience. I also got to work within many of the other executive portfolios and develop an understanding of how they work together, sometimes in overlap. I will carry the lessons that I've learned from these positions into my term as SPO. During my meetings with many of you, I had the opportunity to talk about the importance of communication in the SPO's role. It's this effective communication between each other that will facilitate collaboration on our campus. For many, coming to university will mean leaving home for the first time. It's a period of self-reflection, of discovery. As the student leaders of this academic institution, it is our responsibility to provide all of our constituents with as many opportunities and experiences as we can. This will ensure that everyone has a chance to figure out where they belong in the big, scary world beyond the Western bubble. I believe we will only be able to provide these very opportunities and experiences if we work together in collaborative programming and stop viewing it as an us and a them, but as a we. Because the reality is, it is us, the students, that put the we in Western. I know. My platform doesn't say it all. It can't. There's so much more to my leadership than my ideas, and there's so much more to this role than just programming. It's my experience, my outgoing, energetic, approachable personality, and my passion for connecting with and engaging all students that makes me fit for this role. And it's the experiences and opportunities that this role provides for those students that makes it great. As your next student programs officer, I will work with students to engage them in educational, entertaining, and diverse programming to provide them with a student experience that they will not only enjoy, but will be proud of. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Alex? Yes, Counselor Kamenetsky. Here, you can just use my microphone.
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much for running, and congratulations. So you have a lot of clear experience with orientation roles at Western, which is really impressive and very valuable. I'm just wondering, how did you prepare to take on a leadership role in regards to clubs? And how do you plan to find out about the more policy-oriented roles that you'll take on as SPO? So how can you be confident that your orientation skills will translate into all of the other roles you will take on as SPO?
Absolutely. Good question. So first, Yes, while orientation is but one, of the 5 components of the SPO, it is, a significant component. And that being said, there are very valuable skills that I'm sure any number of SOFs or orientation staff members can tell you have been learned from that role. Working with a team, having been a PA on the Health Sci SOF team, I've developed those abilities, those skills in again, not working, as that, iron fist, but working with those students to ensure that they're having the best experience as they should. In terms of, engaging something such as clubs, I'll be the first to admit I've never been a clubs executive. And I'll be the first to tell you that I don't know everything stepping into this role and that I have a lot to learn. I'm not in the best position to tell you, hey, this is how we should go about fixing our club system. But what I can do is I can promise you that I will engage and talk with those club executives and engage them in conversation to learn about, hey, okay, first, what's working? What's not working? Okay? You're the boots on the ground. What would you recommend? How would you fix it? I'm not promising that I'll be able to make and meet each of those demands, but what I can do is I can work with them to find and implement the best solution possible for all of our students. Thank you.
Is there another question?
Come on.
Okay, if there is no other question, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next up, we will have Leslie Ruggery.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to apologize for my voice to start off with. I know it's not nice to listen to right now, so I'm sorry about that. But my name is Leslie Ruggery, and I'm running to be your next Student Programs Officer. I want to begin by saying thank you to the counselors who took time to meet with me over the past couple of weeks. I really enjoyed getting to learn about you, your goals, and your passions. I hope that our meetings were just the beginning of working together. Throughout my time at Western, I have been very fortunate to have been involved. During my second year, I was a SOF in MedSyd, as well as a VP student events, and eventually became the head SOF of MedSyd, where I worked with many students, watched the SOFs become phenomenal role models, and even better friends. Throughout my time in MedSyd, I came to appreciate the resiliency, the passion, the intelligence, and kindness that lies within our student leaders on this campus. This past year, I was the Residence Orientation Coordinator, where I was able to work with 19 different constituencies, all with different needs, with conversations ranging from high-level administrator issues down to helping choreograph dances. I was able to adapt to every situation. The most unique of my experiences comes from my time as the Associate Peer Programs with the USC. Supporting 7 different coordinators throughout the year, I've been able to gain new insights to the many diverse student groups and develop an understanding of the feelings of many of our students. The position has given me a strong understanding of what is going on in the USC in the day-to-day work of the SPO. I believe that we can learn from the past 2 SPOs and build off of current successes while working to fill on the gaps. I'd like to highlight a few of my many priorities for the year if elected as your SPO. First, I want to set a foundation for an accessible USC. By ensuring that our events have accessibility as a priority, students will no longer be questioning whether or not they can go to an event, but it'll be a matter of if they want to go to the event. Next, communication and collaboration. The USC is extremely fortunate to have many relationships with stakeholders across all campuses, including HBK. By emphasizing communication amongst all student programmers and collaborating as much as possible, we can reduce the quantity of programming and improve the quality. My final point I'd like to highlight is to ensure all voices matter and are treated equally. I believe, and many students believe, that often Western perpetuates a stereotype of a certain type of Western student while leaving many voices unheard and unaccounted for. As your SPO, I want to ensure that all voices across all campuses are heard, are made a priority, and are provided equal opportunity to be heard. For example, it was amazing to see the updates to the gender-inclusive washrooms that came as a result of students in my portfolio as the peer programs engaging with students at large to make it happen. Throughout my term as your SPO, I will work nonstop to do the best job possible. As an executive and member that is accountable to you, Council, I want to work with you to make this campus better. I know I'm able to balance a high-intensity environment with competing needs and tight timelines while remembering that we're all people, that sometimes we just need a listening ear, and that sometimes you'll need someone to care. I want to support you in achieving your goals for your constituency while working to make Western better. To close off, I want to be your SPO because I recognize the privilege that comes with having a wonderful experience here at Western. However, I also recognize that not everyone has felt this way, has felt like they matter, or felt like Western is their home. I believe in the saying, with the privilege of having a voice comes the responsibility to use it. I want to ensure that we are making everyone feel like they matter here at Western, that all programming is valued equally, and that the USC appeals to all types of students. I want to use my voice to help make all the students feel like they matter. And I hope that I'm given the opportunity to work with you next year to support students on this campus. Thank you.
All right, questions? Councillor Campbell.
Ann Campbell, Social Science Counselor. Well, first of all, Leslie, thank you. I think we all appreciated hearing from you. In regards to your platform, you have changing the 65 SOF average outcomes. And in regards to that, it states that if the individual appeals, they will be granted their appeal with the succession plan. So it's kind of a two-part question. So the first part is, do you think that there will be the potential for abuse in this situation? And then secondly, it argues that during the coming year, there will be a strict academic success plan with frequent check-ins, but it doesn't indicate what happens if those criteria aren't met. So you argue that there shouldn't be disoffing, but what happens in that situation?
Yeah, so the first part of your question, I think that we should be trusting our student leaders. If you look around this room, there's a lot of good people here. If you look around the orientation program, there's good people there. And I think that we should be trusting them. I also don't think that they're going to abuse it because they understand what has happened for them to get there. There's over 3,000 students that apply to be a part of the orientation program with around 850 spots. So it's a privilege to be a part of that. And I think that we should be trusting our student leaders, and that's something I really believe in. They're good people. I also think that the monthly check-ins are a way to make sure people aren't abusing it. They will be meeting with the experts in student success or in housing or wherever that looks like to have those check-ins. And if that needs to be more frequently than once a month, that's up to that expert to do so and to communicate that with them. But I think with those check-ins, that's how they will not be taking advantage of the new rule. And also, can you repeat the second part of your question?
So in regards to the check-ins, so what happens if a student doesn't do that or doesn't satisfy the succession plan?
Yeah, so the great thing about the orientation program is there is a governing body, right? And they have a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different people from different campuses, different areas on campus that are there. And when an issue comes up, it's often brought to Chris Elaine and Mac or the SPO to be dealt with like a conduct issue. And I see this being treated the same as a result of them being allowed to participate in the orientation program and us trusting in them. If they take abuse of that, if they take advantage of that, then from there, that's when that is brought up the same way a conduct issue would be, and it would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
One more question? No? Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our candidates. We will now have the group forum portion of our election process. So if you all want to grab a seat on stage. And if you could sit in alphabetical order, so the way that you address council, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay. Great. So just to remind everyone how this is going to work. So at this portion, both the council as well as the audience members are able to ask questions. And the each candidate will take a turn answering the question that is posed. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. We will go in alphabetical order, and then for the next question, reverse alphabetical order, and so on and so forth. And then also at the end, once each candidate has answered the question posed, there will be a 30-second response allotted if any of the candidates mentioned another candidate in their answer. The candidate that is mentioned is able to respond. Any questions? Oh, yes. Okay, Councillor Ma.
So my question is for all the SPO candidates. If you are elected, what is one point, perhaps on another candidate's platform, that you think is a really great idea and would try to implement as well?
Okay, so we'll start with Abnett.
Awesome. So thanks for the question there, Charles. One that I kind of think fits really well with my platform, as well as kind of my idea to shift the culture towards the idea of like athletics on campus, is Tamara's idea of the athletics coordinator. It was something I think that's I was able to see the relationship between the USC and Mustang Athletics this year, and it was something that benefited students. It was something, there was a student voice there, and I think that maybe turning this into a school that we look more towards athletics on a Friday night, something like that, it'll really get our students involved in things that aren't just USC programming related. And I really think that starting that relationship is something that we look towards. So that's one that I'd really like to make happen regardless. Yeah.
All right, so thank you for the question, Charles. This point is on Alex Marshall's platform, and I think with the referendum this year, students identified that mental health on our campus is a priority to them. So I liked his point of making one of the 2 health promotions coordinators dedicated to mental wellness on campus, and I think students have identified that as a need, and there is 2 coordinators, and I think this would be a good way to kind of delegate that work and make sure we're prioritizing what the students are asking for. So I would like to implement that point if elected.
Thank you. One point that I really liked on another individual's platform was Leslie's point about introducing our peer support center during One Love. I thought that was fantastic, and it really did align well with even some conversations I was having with Outgoing Huron and talking about extending where peer support currently exists on our campus. I think that's just a fantastic idea and a great way to introduce peer support into our community from like the get-go, first-year students knowing where it is, what they do.
Thanks, Charles. This point is actually on Leslie's platform. So she has a point about having predecessors of the coordinator positions as part of the hiring process for the incoming coordinators. And I think this is a really good point just in terms of professional development for our students. And also, since I'm not an expert on all of the coordinator positions, I think it'll be really valuable to have kind of a voice in the room that'll kind of let me know what exactly went on that year. And I think it'll just make for a more fruitful process for everyone involved.
Oh, perfect. So I actually was able to read through everybody's platforms last night and was able to identify one off each of their platforms that I've highlighted as pretty important. For Rochelle, it was the mini courses. I really like the opportunity of providing as many experiences as we can for all of our students. On Ben's over there, it was the USC central filing system. I think it's important that we have and maintain a good institutional memory of what's worked and what hasn't. On Tamara's, it was the athletic coordinator. I agree that we need to see more of our students getting involved with our student athletes and that it's important that we show we're supporting them. With Leslie, the 65% soft returner average. I believe that our softs are representing the entirety of our first years, and the reality is not all of them are going to achieve a 65% average. And if we don't have softs who haven't experienced that, how can we support them? And on Karina's, it was the all ages programming, because I do believe that it is important we provide programming for every individual on a campus, regardless of age.
Thank you for that question. Mine is from Rochelle's platform, and it's talking about bringing awareness to the health benefits plan. And even my own friends don't know what's in it, right? And also with the recent update for people under 25 who get free prescriptions, where is that money going to go? How are we going to adjust it? Can that money be reallocated and added to counseling or therapy services? So I think that that's a great point, and there's a lot of potential with the recent changes. And I think that mental health is a priority on this campus, so maybe that's a way that we can help to add some extra support for students.
Is this on? Sorry. Okay, great. Would any of the candidates like to make a final 30-second comment? No? Okay, great. We'll go to Councillor Kamenetsky for our next question.
If you're asking a question, can you please just keep your placard raised so I know who's asking and I can thank you.
So this question is directed to everybody who determined that there should be a percentage cap on how many returning softs that we get in the coming years. I noticed that there was a great inconsistency in the numbers. There was a 33% cap, then 40, then 50. I'm just wondering where these numbers are coming from and how you decided on this specific percentage.
Okay, so we'll start at that end this time.
Awesome, thank you for that question. The reason I landed on the 40% returner rule is because I believe that, and maybe it should be a recommendation, not a formal rule, but I believe that the majority of the team should be new. This is a great involvement. This is a great incubator program. And the reason I landed on 40 and not anything less was because I also recognize the mentorship piece that returners play on a soft team and how they work with their incoming softs, the new ones to the team, a lot throughout the year. And I think that if you go less than 40%, it might be a little bit more challenging to balance your first years and the softs on that team, whereas 40%, you can still balance the softs, you can balance your first years and still support the head team. So that's where that number came for a breakdown on my end.
All right, so I settled on the 50% returner rule, and that was for a couple reasons. First, we do have to be considerate of our smaller constituencies who may not necessarily get those new applicants year after year, that they have enough to have 60% of their team be new applicants or 70% of their team be new applicants. It was also, again, more so less than a hard cap, but more as an incentive to get those soft leadership teams thinking critically about why they're choosing returners for their team. Instead of, if suddenly there's a finite number to the amount of returners that they're choosing, it becomes less about, we've softed before, you're my friend, you're on the team, and more, what are the skills, what are the experiences that each of those individuals have that, allows them to be a good and an effective soft. And so I think it is important that we are, looking at this objectively, and currently, inherently through the nature of the soft program, where a lot of returners, are the friends of memberships of leadership teams, we're not seeing it as objectively as we could and should be.
I can still answer this, right? So I wasn't one of the individuals who had a percentage on their platform. I think that I understand the issues of the returners and the application process for them. I understand kind of the culture that maybe has been created where returners just kind of expect a place on the team the following year. However, I think there are other ways of mitigating these issues, things like soft evaluations or feedback or making sure that softs, they kind of undergo a culture shift. I think that when you kind of place a percentage uniformly to all soft teams, you again kind of forget about the smaller teams or even the bigger teams. When we have 96 people, having 30 returners come back, I think would not be very good for our head soft team, who now has the pressure of having to transition not only their returners but also the 60 new softs. So I think that I understand the returner issue, but I think that there are other ways of mitigating those concerns.
Thank you, Nicole. So yes, I was also another individual that did not include this on my platform purposely. I recognize that throwing out a percentage might have been rather arbitrary, and I feel like it required, and echoing Tamara's sentiments, it is a problem, yes, but it requires far more consultations with the groups that are involved in doing more research with the various stakeholders that exist in orientation before making a number such as that.
I was one of the people that put this on their platform as well. So I included the 1/3 returners, 2/3 new, and this is something that I've seen in practice to work really successfully for the Brescia soft team, for the engineering soft team. My charity team this year was coincidentally this percentage, but it really creates a soft team within a soft team. So each returning soft is able to mentor 2 new softs and kind of show them the ropes of how orientation works and how to take care of yourself throughout the week. So that's something that I've seen to be really successful. I think being a returner should be a privilege, and we should only be taking the best returners we can and making sure it is competitive, because we should be giving more people the opportunity to be a part of this great program. In talking to people and the counselors and other softs, I realized that this is maybe not going to work for every soft team. So Huron in specific said, this might not work for us, and that's okay, but I think it's just not a hard cap by any means, but encouraging that we're taking as many new students into this orientation program as we can, since it is so successful. I was talking about that specific team personally, but yeah.
So I also was referring to that specific team.
Me too.
Awesome. So to cap this off, I was also a candidate that didn't have this on my platform. It was something that I'd thought about putting on, but I didn't feel as though I had enough of a student voice for something like this. I think there is the voice to have the idea of, all right, we can't have everybody returning on the team, but we look at teams like Kings versus Science versus Health Science. They're all going to need different things, and I know everybody has mentioned that it's not like a hard and fast rule. It has to stick to that. I think a guideline is not a terrible idea, but I think really looking into the stakeholders and orientation and really finding a number or something that works for everybody, because I've spoken with a few candidates or a few voters about this, and the word arbitrary continuously comes up. So I just think that's kind of something to look at, something I thought about, and I think it's really something to work with incoming orientation stakeholders on implementing.
Great, thank you. Would any of the candidates like to make a final comment? No? Okay. Next on my list, I have Councillor Cho. Would you like to ask a question? And I will, if you keep your placards raised, I'll add you to my list.
Do you guys have any outside experience, like an outside USC experience or outside the campus experience that can kind of benefit you as like being in this position?
So yeah, thanks for the question there, Calvin. And so yeah, thanks for the question there, Calvin. That really appreciate it. So yeah, there is something that I've been really involved in throughout the last 3 years here at Western. It's a live music-based charity organization called Generosity. So it's something I've kind of been able to see all these students that are on Western campus and go to school here. They've created these experiences for other Western students, as well as our local community organizations. Something that was mentioned in the Pratt Chang platform is getting our students involved in things that are London-based, and outside of that, like Western Bubble, whatever. I think we really need to focus on engaging these students that may be involved in something else that isn't USC related. So I think that this is really an experience that has helped out with my student experience as well as others. We've been able to give back to the London community, and I think it's really something that kind of lends toward the student programs officer portfolio. So that would be one.
Cool, thank you for the question. So an experience I had this summer was volunteering with Lifespin, which is a local London organization, and that was a really cool experience because I got to see the issues that London as a city faces. I grew up in Toronto, and London is a very different city than Toronto, obviously, so that was really a cool learning experience for me, but I think it's also just immersing yourself in the city, going to restaurants in London, going to Victoria Park, going to Grand Bend, and kind of exploring the surrounding area. I think that's important, and I think something that I didn't start doing until maybe my 3rd or 4th year. I was acted once as a babysitter for a local London family and got to take them to their local YMCA. So just cool experiences like that where I'm able to experience what it's like to be a London local as well as just a student in the Western bubble. So I think it's important that we encourage our students to get out and expand in both recreation and in volunteering and in whatever they want into our city, because it is your new home for the 4 years. And I think that's important.
Thank you for the question. I'll speak to something that I've been heavily involved in this year. So this year, I got the opportunity to work as a student researcher with Inova, which is the Downtown Center for Sexual Assault, London. And it was fantastic in that opportunity has allowed me to expand beyond that place, although that has given me a lot of different experience in terms of the way Inova interacts with a lot of stakeholders on our campus or just off of campus in and around the London community. But one such example of the way that's even impacted here at Western is that I did get to work on the motion that was passed about sexual violence education and training that will be coming to all incoming counselors in the fall, which is fantastic. And that's definitely been an outside experience, something I did entirely outside of my extracurriculars, outside of my academics, that I got to get integrated into the community and doing.
One experience that's kind of similar to the REACH program that I've been involved in at Western is I go back to my old high school, and I've actually gotten to be able to do it here at Lucas and Jack Chambers because of my old teachers. And basically, I help the grade 9s with their transition process and really talk to them about, you know, university and what Western has to offer, and kind of give them a better look at what they can look forward to, and also just kind of doing things like coaching like the sports games that they do for that day. So that's just been a really cool experience for me to remember how important that transition is, and being able to do it, yes, at home at my old high school, but also get to do it kind of in the London community has been a really really cool experience for me, and I really value it. And I think it'll apply to this position just because I really understand and value the transition process for all students, specifically within orientation. I understand how important it is to kind of have someone to look up to or someone who can kind of give you advice that you necessarily wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So I think that'll be my answer, yeah.
So over the past 3 years, I have had the opportunity to work at Kohl's, the bookstore up at Masonville there. I have been a customer experience representative there. So other than being extremely well-read, I was also a team lead there and had the opportunity to, I guess, hone those skills in what it is working with a team and then also managing that team effectively. I also, being the customer experience representative, learned and had to how to approach customers, how to, deal with people who may not necessarily, enjoy the experience that they were getting in our store. And I think that pertains directly to the SPO's role because, this is the most student-facing executive position. A large part of this role is about getting out and connecting with and engaging with students. And I think that some of the skills in approaching those individuals that I've learned in that role could directly translate to that. I also understand that, not everybody's going to, have enjoyed their student experience the way I have, and that we have to be working with those individuals and be willing to see their side and compromise with them to ensure that their voice is being heard.
So mine is a little bit of a different approach, but I'm actually from just outside of London, so I've grown up here my whole life, and I teach skating. I skating from 3-year-olds up to, I have a 70-year-old I teach. So there's a lot of different needs, a lot of different skill sets, and working with different people. There's the competing interests of what the parents want, which is similar to administrators here, and what the students want and what they're expecting, and trying to balance that and make sure that the skaters feel like they matter, treating each one differently because they all have their own unique characteristics and then flaws, right? So not doing a blanket thing with them, and I think that really applies to the SPO role because you have those competing interests, you have different perspectives, different needs on both sides, and you really have to be able to manage that in the middle, and you have to be able to listen to both sides, but work with each other, not just one-sided. So that's why I think that my job as a skating coach applies to the SPO role.
Would any of the candidates like to make a final statement on that? No? Okay. Next we have Councillor Marginian. If we have a microphone, just raise your hand up. Yeah.
So diversity and representation is something to celebrate and continue improving on campus. While building the diversity part of your platform, have you consulted with any groups such as LGBTQ+ groups and Indigenous groups? If so, which ones? And if not, would you?
We'll start down at that end.
Awesome, thank you for that question. I agree, diversity is so important on this campus, and then often there are voices that haven't been heard. As a peer programs associate, I've been able to work with many different student leaders and students from different groups like that. So I also sat on the diversity, and I was the co-chair of the Diversity and Equity Community of Practice. So we had an Indigenous services representative on that community of practice, so there was often discussions there and takeaways that I took from those meetings. I also was able to consult with the Ally Western coordinator, with all the coordinators in my portfolio, and really just listening to their different voices. I have been fortunate enough to have built relationships with administrators in different areas on this campus as well. So although I didn't consult all of those administrators while building my platform, I was able to get a lot of the student perspective. I think, yes, more can always be done, and I would have loved to have done more, and I could have done more. We all could have done more, right? So that's something that I think we should always be striving for, is doing more and trying to hear those voices. But I did take away things from my different experiences and different relationships and conversations I've had at various levels with students and administrators.
Thank you for that question. I have to agree that diversity on our campus is of paramount importance. When I had the opportunity to develop my platform, I also had the chance to talk with a lot of the coordinators under the peer programs portfolio as well, the Ally Western coordinator included. I would have to say I have, a long ways to go in terms of engaging more of those students, the executives of the culture clubs, those members of the LGBTQ community in discussion. I'm not the expert in all these diverse groups of students we have on campus. And I think it's important, that whichever one of us steps into the role today has to be willing to engage and connect with those members, with those students, engage them in conversation, allow their unique insight to be shared with us to ensure that our programming mirrors and reflects the diversity that we do have on campus. And I think that that's something that I have made a commitment to doing, stepping into the role.
Yeah, I can definitely echo the same sentiments. You've all read my platform. I don't necessarily have a specific section dedicated to diversity, but it is something that's extremely important to me. As somebody who's been involved with a lot of cultural clubs, I got to consult with them a lot on my platform, talk to a lot of the coordinators. I felt that it was best when it comes to making decisions and implementing things for diversity that I let the student experts, our coordinators, kind of have the final say and have, because they're the student expert. I think that diversity is extremely important, and things that I've been doing this year is, I had partnership with orientation to get more cultural clubs involved in O Week, and they had kind of a day where some of the clubs were involved, but I'd love to see that kind of continue more. So I think those are just things that have been important to me moving forward. Could I have consulted with more students on campus? I think, like we've all said, I definitely could have. But it's kind of an inherent value that I have in all of my programs, ensuring collaboration and a lot of student voices involved. And anything directly, I don't think I should be making the decision on because, again, I don't have those lived experiences. And I think that allowing students to kind of have their input would be really important to me.
Thank you for the question. So I will say that I have a section in my platform dedicated to support diversity and wellness, and it's something that I take very, very seriously. I can speak to a couple things. So first and foremost, I think my platform section definitely does reflect the fact that I consulted extensively with a lot of different individuals. Even throughout my time at Western, I've been very much involved with a lot of these different communities. I can speak to when I was faculty president for arts, I actually scheduled and held a session for my counselors to attend an Indigenous service session that I organized with Indigenous Services, so I already have those pre-existing relationships. As the Women's Issues Network coordinator this year, I actually got to work alongside other coordinators within the peer programming portfolio to put on events such as All In for Allyship. I'm very dedicated to doing addressing diversity and the importance of that from an intersectional perspective, not from a performative perspective. I think that's something that we definitely need to work on in the USC, and I'm very dedicated to doing that, and I think my platform certainly reflects that. Thank you.
Cool, so thank you for the question. I think to say that I've consulted with enough students would be a lie because I don't think any of us could have possibly in preparing for this platform. I think that's going to happen a lot throughout the year. I'd recognizing this as maybe a lack of knowledge on my part. I'm come from a white family and I don't have very many cultural experiences, so a goal for mine would be to make sure that I'm reaching out to as many students as I can and learning. For me, I saw, in terms of Indigenous knowledge, I saw that as a gap on our campus and something that we were lacking. So in my platform, I put the blanket exercise as a way to use programming to learn about parts of our history where we may not be taught in school. So Huron is hosting this exercise on March 22, so I definitely will make an effort to come and check that out. But I think it's about recognizing areas where we're lacking. I have, International Food Fest on my platform, so making sure that we're making these fun avenues for students to gather and learn about different cultures on campus and learn about how diverse our campus is and celebrate that. So to say I've consulted with enough people is not true, and that's something that I think I'll be making an effort to do all year because I think it's very important, obviously.
Awesome. So yeah, thanks again for the question. Something I think that obviously you've highlighted is the importance of diversity on campus, and I really think that's something to bring up again and again. I would say with my platform and the kind of the people that I've consulted, I've been able to consult the students and not necessarily going through every coordinator and going, all right, I'm able to work with the coordinators that face these diversity issues. But I think like looking at these students and the ones that I guess kind of fall in these marginalized groups, those are the ones that I was able to reach out to and kind of speak with. But again, yeah, everybody mentions like it's something that we work towards, and like I'm not going to be the expert on everything in terms of diversity. So I really think looking at, all right, there are these resources, these are people that I can work with throughout the year, and that's something obviously I'd love to learn more about. You asked that question at the end, and I think that's something that should be addressed. Like I am absolutely like very open to learning more about the issues and the way that we can promote diversity on our campus. So yeah, thanks for that, and I guess it's nice to see everybody thinking about that up here. Yeah.
Okay. Would any of the candidates like to make a final comment on that? No? Okay. So at this time, we have reached our 1 hour time allotted for the election. I do have roughly 10 counselors on my speakers list for questions, but lunch is also being served. So it's up to you whether you'd like to extend the time for questions. Otherwise, Councillor Denezi? After lunch? After lunch? Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, you have to vote before we eat. Councillor Griffith? 20 more minutes. Can I get a seconder for a motion to extend? Councillor Barroso, is anyone in objection of extending the question period for 20 more minutes? Councillor Tang? Okay, we'll take a vote on it then. All those in favor of extending the question period for another 20 minutes? That looks like majority, so we will extend. So it's currently 12:20 at the moment, so then we will go until 12:40 approximately. So next up on my list is Councillor Coates.
Emma Coates, outgoing FIMS president. First off, I'd like to say it's great to see 4 female SPO candidates this year. With that being said, how do you see yourself empowering women in leadership next year, considering that female empowerment is not just about getting women into leadership roles, it's also about acknowledging the barriers that women face in rooms that are often dominated by straight white men?
Awesome. Thanks so much for the question. So as a straight white male, I'm gonna answer this question. So I really think that this idea of empowerment of women is something that we need to be addressing. I personally have some amazing women in my life. Thanks to Tamara, my mom's watching, so hey mom. I have my beautiful girlfriend over there supporting me, so it's nice to see that. But I really think that this idea of empowerment is something that we look to our past leaders and the ones that have said, all right, like we can see 4 women up here that have been so successful in the roles that they have kind of taken on. So it's looking to the new women in these roles, like the new counselor positions, and saying, all right, like these are people that have been able to be successful in the time, and they've also faced their hardships. So I guess my idea behind that is looking towards leaders that are welcome with sharing their experiences and kind of saying, hey, like not everything is going to be the way you think. I guess just looking to those leaders and saying, yeah, I'd love to hear from them and the things that they would say to our women in leadership, as well as the ones that are looking to be there. So yeah, thank you.
Cool. So thank you for the question, Emma. In the PVP debate, or in the PVP election, we heard a lot about empowering women, and I kind of thought, yeah, I feel empowered, but in thinking about it further, I thought, what actually makes me feel empowered? So this kind of reminded me of an event that happened in my 3rd year, and so it was the USG event. And most events you get invited to by, a Facebook post. But for this event, Ali Adamo and Emily Ross reached out to me and sent me a personal invitation saying, we really think you should come to this event. And that made me feel like my capabilities on campus were recognized and made me feel like I wanted to go to the event. And they were obviously women in very powerful positions, so that meant a lot to me. So making sure that we're reaching out to students and really telling them, look, you have a lot of capabilities, and recognizing the students who are in those leadership positions is important to me. I'd love to move the USG event into first semester, where we can encourage more women to come out and people of all genders to come out and talk to powerful women in London and learn from those leaders, and maybe prepare them for becoming their council president or their PVP slates, and talk about not only how important women are in this campus, but also how to prepare a PVP platform and to kind of have those starting points. And I think
thank you. That's the end of your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. So this past year, having served as the Women's Issues Network Coordinator, particularly relevant in this realm. So I differ slightly in opinion in that I don't think it's about the buzzword empowerment. I very much believe it's about structural change that needs to occur in a variety of different systems across campus. And our discussions, the everyday things that we say, the way we approach different conversations. And it's also about recognizing that intersectional element as well, that even within women, there are marginalized groups that exist there. So it's not just women. It's like also recognizing the particular issues that exist even within that, right? The added elements of privilege that may exist, et cetera. So it's very much about addressing things structurally, and part of that is representation. So like you had mentioned, for women up on this stage, part of it is about representation, but it's also about the extra steps. And I mentioned that in our communication, the way we dialogue, even evaluating our policies and looking at our motions.
Thank you. That's the end of your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. I think that definitely representation is a huge part. Specifically in first semester, I think bringing focus to the women who are in leadership positions and kind of would be kind of an encouragement to other women. I know me even going for this position, it was nice to know that, you know, Ali had been in this position and Taryn before me, so it made me more comfortable to kind of be able to take a step forward. So I think that representation piece is important. But I do agree that we do have to acknowledge the barriers, and I think that, for example, this past International Women's Day, I was kind of disappointed with the USC and kind of their lack, I would say, of programming or discussions about this event. I know that we had USG in the evening, and that was a really cool way to talk to professional women and really get to know them. But I think that extending that to the full day, and not just on International Women's Day, but encouraging these conversations year long, I think would be a priority for me moving forward.
I have to agree with my fellow candidate, Karina, on that it is a structural change. It seems that year after year, when it comes to PVP slates and the lack of female representation, it's almost an afterthought that suddenly, oh shoot, now we need to be running some sort of programming to get women in office. And we have to be having these conversations earlier. We have to be having these conversations sooner, so that right from the get-go, these female leaders arriving at university understand that and feel empowered to get involved with our campus. And I agree with Rochelle as well in saying that it is through hosting those sort of events and having those direct contact that we can go about doing so. I think having female leaders reach out to others around campus in a very personal manner rather than on Facebook will promote attendance at events like USC, and we'll see better turnout and better engagement in those things, so that we can start having those conversations earlier on. I'd like to also see a similar event at the beginning of the year, so right from the get-go, women in leadership can feel empowered throughout the year, and it's not as the end of the year is wrapping up. Having had the opportunity.
Thank you. That's the end of your time.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to agree with the other candidates. I really do think that we need intersectional feminism on this campus, not just feminism. And I agree that it starts with the structural change. But I think that comes from recognizing and giving credit to the women on this campus. There's certain women in positions who aren't getting credit, who aren't being empowered, who aren't there is an awareness about what they're doing, right? So we need to really bring that awareness and give them credit where credit is due. And I think that starts with earlier recognition, and congrats to all the women in this room. There's a lot of women here. There's a lot of women presidents coming in, right? So I think that we really need to start that change earlier and give the recognition sooner than later.
Okay, thank you. Would any candidate like to make a final comment? No? Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Gangretti.
I'd like to pass this on to the proxy for Danny Chang.
So SPO has the largest and most student-facing portfolio in the executive, so they create programming and running services for students in so many different ways that they experience both campus and the USC. But on another note, the vice president's job is to represent all students to campus and external stakeholders. So how do you ensure that the USC always has a single unified vision when it comes to running programs and events, but also at the same time making sure that the advocacy and lobbying we do on campus to external stakeholders are all unified?
So we'll start down there.
I think the first step is communication. I think we need to be willing to talk. Without programming, advocacy doesn't work as well, right? We need the personal anecdotes to back it up, to back up that data. So I think that conversation needs to happen. We need to be willing to share with each other, not really hoard off our different things. And I think that communication is a way to unify the USC and to make sure that we have a similar vision going forward. And talking with not just the VP, but with the rest of the exec, with the coordinators and associates and committees, and making sure that they know what our vision is for the year, and empowering and making sure that everyone is aware within the USC, so together we can do more as opposed to operating in silos or not talking with each other. I think that if we put our heads together and work together, we can do more as an organization than if we do it apart.
I'm going to echo very similar sentiments to that of Leslie there, in saying that, you know, it's necessary that the incoming executive has an opportunity, you know, to lock themselves in a room for a day and hash out exactly what it is that their vision is for the year. What are their goals? What is it that they're hoping to achieve? What, you know, what is Danny really hoping to drive home in terms of advocacy over this next year? And how can we go about providing programming that complements and supports that? So again, we are coming forward on a unified front. So we're not, you know, sending mixed messaging to our students, but coming forward together. I think, you know, communication is paramount in that sense, and that, you know, sharing that and disseminating that information to your associates and your coordinators and saying, you know, all right, these are our goals. This is our vision for the year and for that advocacy work. How, you know, what are your recommendations as the experts, you know, in those niche portfolios? What sort of programming ideas do you have that can complement these advocacy initiatives? And again, I think, you know, communication is crucial to see that success.
Yeah, I think that communication is a huge part. I plan to have a close working relationship with the Vice President incoming this year to ensure that we're on the same page, and I think that the knowledge that the SPO has in terms of the programming on campus, all of the roundtables and committees they sit on are definitely going to be super helpful in that situation. I also think it's important to allow the students who are running those programs to have a voice in those advocacy efforts because they are the experts. So in my platform, I talk about having more peer programs or more of our programs and peer programs coordinators involved in those committees. So the first thing that I want to do is sit down with Danny and the associates under his portfolio and kind of map out a framework of the capacity of each of our coordinators and which committees they can be involved in. And then moving forward, they can kind of be that voice because they're the student expert. They exactly know what they're talking about, as opposed to perhaps I have more of that supervisor level. So I think, like, kind of echoing, communication is really important, but also making sure that the students who are the experts are part of the conversations would allow us to work closely together.
Thank you. I'll speak a little bit to my experience. So my second year when I was Vice President Finance, I was part of an executive that didn't have that communication, and it somewhat fell apart. So then coming into the presidential role the following year, I ensured that going forward, my executives and I had excellent communication, and we were all very forward about our plans and our goals and what we wanted to see achieved that year, and it ended up working very, very well. So I have that experience in there and recognizing what needs to happen in order for there to be a cohesive executive structure, and how important that is in achieving your goals. So I actually even have a point on my platform that mentions, you know, how even though SPO and VP are very different roles than one another, they can work together in order to get their goals accomplished at the end of the year, such as through incentives, for example, working together. And I think that that's definitely a way to move forward in terms of ensuring that there's a cohesive executive structure, communicating, and then seeing ways that we can work together in order to achieve our goals.
Cool, thank you for the question. So I think communication is definitely very important. So there's actually a committee that the Student Programs Officer and the Vice President work on together called the Political Action Committee, better known as PAC. And so I see this as a great opportunity for the Student Programs Officer and Vice President to work together, and with the peer programs groups and any other students in the Student Programs Officer's portfolio who want to be involved in advocacy. So, for example, EnviroWestern really wanted to do some advocacy initiatives this year. So this is a committee where student programs and Vice President can collaborate and kind of align their advocacy initiatives. Obviously, Danny's going to come in with a platform of things he wants to advocate for, but also these students are very knowledgeable and very passionate about these areas, such as the Peer Programs Committee. So making sure that they're being connected to each other. There's a huge room for you know, incentives, like Karina mentioned, incentives of giving away a concert ticket to help with our advocacy initiatives and using programming to advocate to the student body. So I think the PAC committee is where I would focus a lot of efforts on ensuring that our advocacy initiatives are aligned with the Student Programs Officer portfolio and the Vice President.
So this idea of communication has been brought up a lot, but I really think it's all about the relationships that we're making, the relationships with the executive between one another, and just coming on that vision that we're going to have. It has to be student-facing. It has to have the students in mind, and I think it's going to be something that kind of works. We work down. Ultimately, I really think it's Huron and HUCSC or KUCSC and Kings and Social Science Student Council that know your students the best. And it's creating relationships with those student councils and those stakeholders that we're going to kind of understand, all right, what is the vision for the students? and how can we be cohesive in promoting this to everybody. So that idea of unification, I think it starts with our executive, it starts with these relationships, and we look out to those stakeholders that really know the students the best. So we've mentioned coordinators, associates, and those are the people as well that we're looking to. So yeah, that idea of relationship building is really big in my idea of unification.
Any final comments from any of the...
I just wanted to add that as somebody who sat on the political advisory committee this year, I think that we can do better with that, and I think that the conversations at that table need to be made aware to the broader student body, not just the 9, 10 of us that are in that room. I think that that's an area for improvement with that committee. So I think it was good that you brought it up, Rochelle. I just think that we need to do better than what we did this year.
Okay. Next, we will go to Councillor Watson for the next question.
I would like to defer my speaking rights to Councillor Van Galen.
This question is for everyone. What platform point do you think is your most contentious, and how did you come to your stance?
Awesome. So thanks for the question. So my most contentious platform point, I would say, would be my idea to implement what the Faculty of Health side did this year with their idea of mental health first aid, campus-wide mental health first aid. So it has a couple steps to it. So the first thing, my idea behind something like this is not necessarily using that campus-wide mental first aid for the plan, but looking towards a program that gives, first of all, our student leaders, so counselors, faculty presidents, and SOFs, that base level of knowledge regarding mental health. And I really think it's important to have this base level of knowledge for our student leaders, because these are the ones that act as that first line of support. I'd like to implement something like this in the near future, but what the big plan behind a point like this is being able to give this knowledge and these referral skills and foundational level of knowledge to all of our students. So maybe implementing a health and wellness day in O Week that kind of goes over, all right, this is the foundation of knowledge that you guys need to go through the next 4 years. Everybody can act as a peer support, and I think it's something that we look towards going to in the future. Not something that can happen immediately.
Thank you. That's the end of your time.
Thank you for the question. So I think quite obviously my most contentious point is the pro-choice voice on campus, and I've talked a little bit about this, but this is something that I saw as an area that we were kind of lacking in on campus, and as a student I was really frustrated in that, so I wanted to address it in some way. Obviously this platform point isn't polished and finished, and I think that's the point of it, is that it is an issue we need to address, and I want to work with more students and get more voices and figure out how we're going to address it. I'm really excited to work with other schools and see how they've addressed it on their campuses, because it is an issue that many campuses face. So I think I came to this point kind of recognizing it as a gap, but also just providing that we're recognizing this issue. I think we all know this is an issue, but we're not recognizing it. And one counselor mentioned that we might get kind of have an article in the Gazette, but I think anything that we do is increasing conversation about this issue. And I saw it as a gap, so I'm excited to address it with students and consult more students on it.
Thank you for the question. I would say the point of my platform that is most contentious is, I think, only contentious to me, but it is my soft programming fund. And it's not because I don't think it should be there. In fact, it was something that I was very adamant on being there, especially in my consultations and conversations with SOFs. They're very adamant on this. And so it's for long-term programming past O Week, a fund being available. I think it's contentious because it's probably the only part of my platform where I can't speak specifically to the area of the budget it'd be coming from. That would require more consultation with the incoming Secretary Treasurer. So I would definitely say, in terms of contention, it's just the point that I would really require more consultation with incoming Secretary Treasurer in order to understand a little bit more about, but it's something that our SOFs have definitely said that they absolutely want, so I stand by it.
Yeah, so I think when I was making my platform, I really tried to make it super feasible and open for the entire student body, so I didn't necessarily have any super contentious points. What I will say is the idea of the head SOF honorarium or compensation, that was kind of a conversation that started with me in my consultations, but then after kind of explaining that I don't necessarily believe in providing kind of part of our USC budget to providing head SOFs honorariums and trying to figure out different avenues to go down, whether that be work study or, talking with the administration to get a permanent allocation, the contention kind of went off there. I actually think my most contentious point was SPO responsiveness. Everybody kind of came up to me and said, I don't know how you're actually going to do that because they perhaps didn't have the best experience with that this year. So I think moving forward, it's just important to delegate any emails that aren't necessarily super not important, I would say, but things that I can delegate to my associates and coordinators as opposed to answering them myself, and making sure that undergraduate students are my priority for answering emails. That's kind of how I would figure out the SPO responsiveness that happened to be super contentious in my consultations.
So I think my most contentious point, we touched on a little bit. It was my returner rule, especially with the varying percentages across the board. So I'll move on to my second most contentious point, which is similar to that of Tamara's. It was my 24-hour response rule. During my meetings with many of you over the past 2 weeks, it was something that came up again and again in terms of this year. The replies did not meet that 24-hour promise. And I think the issue is we have to be prioritizing. The reality is, undergraduate and professional students on our campus are the ones who are funding the programming, and they're the ones for whom the programming is for. And as such, they are my priority. I'm held directly accountable to them. Once I can make that distinction within my emails, not diminishing the importance of community members, professors, administration, but meeting those replies within a 48, 72-hour time period, and holding myself accountable to those constituents to whom are my priority. I would like to mention one oversight on my part in terms of that 24-hour response rule. You saw it in my fellow candidate Karina's platform. That could not extend to orientation week. SPO was incredibly busy during that week. That week you'd have to look at considering a 48, 72-hour
Thank you. That's the end of your time.
Awesome. So my point was already brought up by Anne, the 65 SOF average. So the reason I landed on this is because when you think about a SOF, what is their job? They're not there to be a tutor. They're meant to be a referral, right? And that's something we're really trying to hammer home with the SOFs. And that goes for faculty and resident SOFs. And just because I have a 63% average doesn't mean I can't refer you any better than somebody with a 65% average, right? And I really believe in keeping them in the program with us. Let's help them. We have the connections. We have the resources. We have the relationships across this campus to help our students do better instead of leaving them on their own and hoping they stumble across those. I believe that we can keep them with us and help support them throughout the year, help them grow, and eventually instill maybe better academic success in their future. But I think that we should keep them with us so we can help them as opposed to just leaving them on their own.
All right, thank you. Any candidates like to make a final comment? Sure.
Awesome. So the reason I bring up my my campus-wide mental health plan is because of its proactive nature. I think it's something that we have these great resources on campus when we're going through some kind of crisis or something like that to refer to. But I really think that this is proactive. Everybody kind of has that knowledge. So I really think this is something that we need to be going through. I've had some amazing conversations, and I really want to keep that going. So that's my last point there.
Okay. Thank you. So we now have come to the end of our 20-minute extension for elections, at which point, unless anyone would like to motion to extend again, we will be continuing on to lunch, and you all will be completing your ballots. All right. Thank you to all candidates. No? All counselors, please. Yeah.
Just a reminder, I will be sitting at the back in that booth right there where all the sweaters are. If you want to bring your $10, we can do cash or debit or credit today. So just come find me. Once you pay, you just sign off, grab your sweater, and you're good to go. All right, see you all.
In terms of announcing results, last year I just came up and announced. Do you want to do the same? Yes, absolutely. Okay. How do you want me to kind of